my name is Stephanie Carroll, and I am the author of historical fiction novel, A White Room, and I'm working on a second novel as well, but it's not finished, so won't get into that. But today I'm here to talk to you about something that I usually say about my book, Magical Realism. A lot of times when I talk about my book, I say I write historical women's fiction with a touch of magical realism. But magical realism is kind of a new thing, or at least something that people don't know a lot about, because usually people go, what? Or touch of magical realism, that sounds so interesting, which is the idea of me saying it. But I thought I could talk to you a little bit about what it is in my book, and some other books that I have here that also use this lovely technique. And there are a lot of people, a lot of writers out there that do this, and a lot of movies too that do this. I just happen to have 3 in my possession right now, and so those are the ones we're going to talk about. First, a definition. Magical realism is basically you taking magical qualities and ideas and things and treating them as if they're just real, as if they're happening and there is no explanation or suggestion of magic being behind it. So, okay, that's kind of all over the place, so let me give you a better example. Magical realism is like having a story and having all of the characters in it live beyond 100 years. And it's not explained as being, you know, something that happened because they ate nuclear paste or evolution or whatever. It's just the way it is in the book or in the movie. They don't explain it. That's just the way it is. The only movie that I can think of right now that does this is called The House of Spirits, which is actually based on a novel by Isabel Allende. In the movie, which has Meryl Streep and Antonio Banderas and Winona Ryder in it, it's a great movie, you should see it. One of the characters, not even necessarily the main character, but one of the main characters, she's an important character, can move things with her mind and see the dead and kind of see the future. But they never, like, it's not the focus of the book. The book isn't about her and that ability. It's just one of her characteristics. Like, this girl has green eyes, she can move things with her mind. It's just the way it is. It's never explained as having any kind of magical origin or anything. It's just the way she is. And that is the perfect example of magical realism. Something magical and crazy, but not being necessarily something that is explained. Again, The House of Spirits, it's a movie. See the movie. It is so good. It's also a book. I always suggest watch the movie, then read the book, because if you do it the other way around, you're going to hate the movie. So you might as well watch the movie first, then read the book, because the book is always going to be better. Again, book, House of Spirits by Isabel Allende. Great. In my novel, I do magical realism. It's not, I wouldn't say it's on the same level as like Isabel Allende, because it's not necessarily actual magic taking place, but it is in a way. In my book, A White Room, I have my main character, Emmeline Dorr, is plagued by hallucinations of her house and furniture coming to life and plotting against her. The reason that I've been referring to this as magical realism is because the way that I describe it is without explanation. I explain my character seeing furniture moving and dancing and the house plotting, and the way she talks about it in the book, the way that I present it in the book, is that's just the way it is. It's not necessarily explained that she's outright bonkers. As you go through the book, you do realize that she's crazy, and that's why she's having these hallucinations. But the way that the protagonist and the way that the reader experiences it is very much like magical realism. That's just the way it is. That's just what's happening. There is no explanation. So I want to, though, give you some more examples of other books that do a really great job of magical realism, because it's just something that I love. I love magical realism. It's awesome. Okay, so here I have The Sugar Queen by Sarah Addison Allen. This is a New York Times bestseller. Best-selling author of Garden Spells. I'm sure this will become a bestseller if it isn't already. I'm going to read you the flaps. The Sugar Queen. 27-year-old Josie Serini is sure of 3 things. Winter in her North Carolina hometown is her favorite season. She's a sorry excuse for a Southern belle, and sweets are best eaten in the privacy of her hidden closet. For while Josie has settled into an uneventful lifestyle in her mother's house, her one consolation is the stockpile of sugary treats and paperback romances she escapes to each night, until she finds her closet harboring none other than local waitress Della Lee Baker, a tough-talking, tender-hearted woman who is 1 part nemesis and 2 parts fairy godmother. Fleeing a life of bad luck and big mistakes, Della Lee has decided Josie's clandestine closet is the safest place to crash. In return, she's going to change Josie's life because clearly it is not the closet of a happy woman. With Della Lee's tough love, Josie is soon forgoing pecan rolls and caramels, tapping into her startling keen feminine instincts, and finding her narrow existence quickly expanding. Before long, Josie bonds with Chloe Finley, a young woman who makes the best sandwiches in town, is hounded by books that inexplicably appear whenever she needs them, and most amazingly of all, has a close connection to Josie's longtime crush. As little by little Josie dares to step outside herself, she discovers a world where the color red has astonishing power. Passion can make eggs fry in their cartons, and romance can blossom at any time, even for her. It seems that Della Lee's work is done, and it's time for her to move on. But the truth about where she's going, why she showed up in the first place, and what Chloe has to do with it all, is about to add one more unexpected chapter to Josie's fast-changing life. So, the magical realism in this book, you can already see it in the flap copy, is they're talking about how she meets a woman who is hounded by books that inexplicably appear whenever she needs them. And later, she says that Josie discovers that the color red has astonishing power. Passion can make eggs fry in their cartons. These are elements of magical realism. That's from, again, Sarah Addison Allen's The Sugar Queen. Next is Eva Moves the Furniture by Margot Livesey. Again, I'm going to read you a little bit of the flat copy, give you an example here. On the morning of Eva McEwen's birth, 6 magpies congregate in the apple tree outside the window. A bad omen. According to legend, that night Eva's mother dies, leaving her to be raised by her aunt and heart-sick father in the small town of Troon, Scotland. Eva's peaceful childhood is disrupted the day a woman and a girl mysteriously appear in her garden. Over the years, the two make frequent visits, invisible to everyone else. At first they seem benevolent, helping to tidy her room and collect the hen's eggs, but as Eva grows older, her visitors' intentions become increasingly unclear. Do they wish to protect or harm her? Is their meddling in her best interests or prompted by darker motivations? In the shadow of World War II, Eva studies nursing in Glasgow, tending to the injured soldiers. But when she falls in love with a young plastic surgeon, her companions seem to have a very different idea as to her fate. And once again, she finds herself unable to resist their pull. Margot Livesey has been praised for her intelligent, suspenseful plotting, her stringent moral sensibility, her profound insight into character, and her spare, luminous prose. With Eva Moves the Furniture, Livesey has written her most compelling work yet, a magical novel about loneliness, love, and the profound connection between mother and daughter, one that fuses the simplicity of a fairy tale with the complexity of adult passions. So the magical realism here is a little bit more similar to my book. She has these people coming to her who are invisible. A woman and a young child, and they sort of follow her throughout her entire life, even after she grows up. The flat copy, to me, suggests that these imaginary friends, quote unquote, have something to do with her mother, who died when she was a baby. Again, that is Eva Moves the Furniture by Margot Livesey. Next, you guys might have heard of this one, maybe. I don't know, I heard of it. Obviously, The Icarus Girl by Helen Oyeyemi. Helen Oyeyemi also wrote White is for Witching, which I think is such a good comparable to my book because it's got a house that kind of has a life of its own. Unfortunately, I can never use it as a comp because it's young adult, and you're not supposed to do that. My book is for adults. But The Icarus Girl is about Jess Harrison, who is 8 years old. Sensitive, whimsical, possessed of an extraordinary and powerful imagination, she spends hours writing haiku, reading Shakespeare, or simply hiding in the dark warmth of the airing cupboard. As the child of an English father and Nigerian mother, Jess just can't shake off the feeling of being alone wherever she goes, and the other children in her class are wary of her tendency to succumb to terrified fits of screaming. Believing that a change from her English environment might be the perfect antidote to Jess's alarming mood swings, her parents whisk her off to Nigeria for the first time. There she meets her mother's family, including her formidable grandfather. Jess's adjustment to Nigeria is only beginning when she encounters Titiola, or Tilly Tilly, a ragged little girl her own age. To Jess, it seems that at last she has found someone who will understand her. But gradually, Tilly Tilly's visits become more disturbing, making Jess start to realize that she doesn't know who Tilly Tilly is at all. Helen Oyeyemi draws on Nigerian mythology to present a strikingly original variation on a classic literature theme, the existence of doubles, both real and spiritual, who play havoc with our perceptions and our lives. Lyrical, haunting, and compelling, The Icarus Girl is a story of twins and ghosts, of a little girl growing up between cultures and colors. It heralds the arrival of a remarkable new talent. So, I think that kind of shows another example of something, a potentially what could be called an imaginary friend that's actually a real thing. Again, that is The Icarus Girl by Helen Oyeyemi. And even though it's young adult, I really recommend that you check out White is for Witching because it's so interesting, the ideas in there. I mean, you know, more and more adults are coming to like young adult fiction, and I think it's with good reason. I think maybe, and this is my, you know, non-professional theory, I think it's because young adult fiction has a lot more crazy, out of the box, out there, mind-bending ideas in them. I mean, there's a lot of fantasy, a lot of escape, and that's what we really want out of books. And even though all other books are awesome too, I think a lot of adults are coming to really enjoy young adult fiction. I know I do. Right now I'm reading A Monster Calls. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but it's young adult and it's very interesting. It's a book about a monster, a tree comes to life in the night and comes visit this little boy whose mother's dying. I mean, think of the ideas. That's like, oh, that's another good magical realism example. I should have brought that book out. But there you go, another magical realism example. The Monster Calls, A Monster Calls. Let me Google who wrote it really quick. It's actually a really interesting book because it's written by someone as he was writing the last story that another author was going to write before she died. It's by Patrick Ness. Patrick Ness, A Monster Calls. Check that one out too. It's cool. So obviously a lot of these books sounded very similar to mine. You know, imaginary friends, crazy people. You know, we have somebody who has a tendency to hide in cupboards and have hysterical fits. A little bit, sounds like she might have something going on in her head. Imaginary friends plague her through World War I. Eating disorder. She hides in her closet and eats sweets. So these have that sense of, like, you know, having a psychological or obsessive disorder of some sort. That has less to do with magical realism and more to do with the fact that I have these books because I got them because they're comps. They're comparable to my book. And when you pitch your book to agents, you have to have comparable titles. It's really important. So that's why those all have that sense of, like, you know, a mental thing going on. It's because in my book there's a mental thing going on. Okay, well, that was my very in-depth description of magical realism and some examples. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you check out future blogs, or vlogs. Blogs too, I blog. Check out my vlogs.